"Get out of the way!" shouted Gabe Williams as he revved his four-wheeler and careened past his cousin, Layla. "I'll beat you back to the campsite." "No, you won't!" cried Layla. She kicked her own four-wheeler into high gear. With dead leaves flying out beneath her wheels, she chased Gabe up the bumpy Brown Mountain Trail. Gabe bent forward and narrowed his eyes behind the visor of his helmet. He steered over a sharp rise, causing him to be airborne for several seconds before the tires struck the biking trail again with a jolt. "Ha!" he shouted above the roar of the engine. He gripped the handlebars tightly and steered it down the trail. Trees on both sides rushed past in a blur. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Wind batted Gabe's face and arms. A squirrel darted into the trail and back off again, out of Gabe's way. A groundhog peered from the thick green brush at trail side, and then it was past and behind him. Mourning doves fluttered up from the trail as he raced toward them. "This is great." A few moments later, he saw the campsite, down and around a curve. Visible among the dense trees were tendrils of campfire smoke and the blaze-orange tents that the Outdoor Adventures Camping Club had pitched earlier that day. Gabe slowed his four-wheeler and coasted off the main biking trail onto the leaf-covered dirt path that led into the campsite. A few seconds later, he heard Layla behind him, slowing her vehicle as well. "You weren't supposed to ride so far ahead of us," Layla said as she pulled alongside Gabe. Her ponytail was tangled from the wind. "We were supposed to ride together, you know that." Gabe and Layla coasted their vehicles along the path until they reached the campfire and tents. They turned off the engines and removed their helmets. Gabe hung his on a handlebar, then looked at his cousin. "We were supposed to have fun," he said. "Staying in a clump isn't fun. It's stupid. I'm going to be 13 in September. That's way too old to have to be watched." "I'm only a year younger than you," replied Layla. "And it's more fun doing things together. Besides, you know the rules. When we go camping, we're supposed to do what Ursula and Mike say. They're head of the club, don't forget." "You're so immature," said Gabe. He made a face. "Sometimes you have to stretch the rules, just like a big old rubber band. And sometimes you even have to break them." "Yeah? And when you stretch the rubber band, it can snap back and really hurt your fingers," said Layla. "Whatever," said Gabe. He pushed the four-wheeler against a tree, secured the padlock and chain, and then walked over to the campfire, where a large covered pot of campfire stew had started to simmer. He plopped down on a folding chair beside Mike Anderson, who was carving a hiking stick with his pocket knife. Seated on Mike's other side was Isabel Diaz. Her legs were tucked up under her, the hood of her sweatshirt was pulled down to hide her face, and she was reading a book. She was new to the club. Gabe didn't know what to think about her. She hardly ever talked to anybody. She wouldn't even ride the four-wheelers Mike had rented for her. There were enough for everyone, but hers remained chained up to a walnut tree beside the girls' tent. "Hey, Mike," Gabe said. He reached down into the cooler between the chairs and pulled out a frosty cold bottle of water. He flipped the bottle high in the air and caught it. "Want me to put more wood on the fire?" Mike, the club's bearded 32-year-old leader, looked up from his carving. "There's plenty on there for now, thanks," he said with a smile. But then he frowned. "Hey, what are you doing back here before Ursula, Jin, Layla, and Felix? You were supposed to stick together." "Layla's back already, too," said Gabe. Mike looked past Gabe and saw Layla sheepishly parking her four-wheeler. "I was only trying to catch up with Gabe to tell him to slow down," she said. "I'm really sorry." Mike let out a long breath. He shook his head and turned back to Gabe. "Come on, Gabe, you know the rules. You promised to follow them on this trip. A few good rules are what make our club fun and safe." Gabe grinned, then made a face. "Safe's so boring." Mike didn't laugh. "You never used to push the limits, Gabe," he said. "In a way, I can understand why you want to, as you're the oldest one in our club, next to Ursula and me. But there are times when you have to keep within the limits. I don't want to take any chances with anyone getting hurt." "Come on, I know how to ride a four-wheeler. I'm the best ever. I rock." "Sure, but you just can't keep pushing. I want you to be able to stay in the club,